What's going on, guys? Super Insane 18 here, and today we are taking a break from the Fiendsmith Overlord, and we are going to take a look at Tenpai dragons. So let's go ahead and show you guys the video. It's just going to be a deck profile. If you guys want to see a full comprehensive combo tutorial, let's get this video to 200 likes. That will prove to me that that is exactly what you guys want. So go ahead and smash that like button down below if you want that combo, but otherwise, let's get into the profile. Tenpai Dragon is a strategy that is taking the competitive scene by storm. We all assumed that it was going to be a tier 0 meta, but we actually saw Tenpai take up not only a lot of top cut slots in the NAWCQ, but even winning the EUWCQ, so these ratios are going to be somewhat familiar. Of course, we have our 3 copies of Pydra. This is just the starter and searcher for our deck. Of course, our 3 copies of Chundra, and our 2 copies of Fadra. And that is not all, we are also on 1 copy of Genroku, the newest one out of the Infinite Forbidden set. Now, this next card is a bit of a tech choice. You don't have to run it, but I really like the way that it combos with the deck, and that is, of course, Dora, being able to search for your Genroku on summon. And if you didn't know, Genroku is very similar to something like the Snake Eyes Poplar, being able to summon itself when it searches, or when it's searched rather, and then it also is able to tribute itself to summon from deck. So this one card just acts as an additional starter for your deck as well, while leaving an additional body on board for either synchro or link plays. Then, of course, we have 3 of the Mulcharmy Perulia, Ignore the Proxy. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to pick up a 3rd just yet, but you definitely want to play 3 in this deck because it is a blind going second deck. So we are playing a very large number of hand traps and board breakers as well, and by playing this, we are able to ensure that we get to them as well as our combo. So on to some of the other hand traps. Of course, we are on 3 copies of Ash Blossom. This is just the most generic and the most impactful hand trap. Not necessarily most impactful, but you can hit the most things, so it's just really good to play. Do not fear that your opponent is going to be able to Hida it back. You are playing a ton of board breakers, so I would rather just stop something and prevent them from potentially going and give them the possibility of a Hida, rather than just stunt myself and not have an Ash Blossom. And then we have 3 copies of Dimension Shifter. Now, if you saw my previous combo video for Tenpais, you know that this deck has no problem OTKing through something like Shifter. So it is a no-brainer to just play it because this is going to completely demolish not only the Snake Eye deck, but a good portion of the other top decks as well. So it just makes the most sense that since you're able to play through it, you should run it yourself. Onto the spells, of course, we have 3 Songen Summoning. This is the field spell for the deck and what makes your cards unaffected during the main phase. Very, very strong. And of course, the Songen Kaiman, which is not only a search, but if you do it in the battle phase, is also a deck-specific emergency teleport, being able to just summon out your Tenpais and further extend your plays. We are playing 3 copies of Pot of Prosperity because we want to see the most consistency possible, and since the upwards of damage that this deck can put is about 38,000, you don't care about having your damage for the sake of consistency. Onto some of the board breakers, we have our 3 copies of Forbidden Droplet. This is just really good not only as a going second board breaker, but if your opponent forces you to go first, you are able to set it and use it on their turn as an interruption as well, followed by 3 copies of Raigeki. A lot of decks actually surprisingly don't have a way to just protect their board from being destroyed, so if you can hit them with a Raigeki and then just swing for a ton of damage, you're in a very good spot. We have 2 copies of Lightning Storm for the same reason, with the added benefit of being able to hit the back row as well, and of course also our Harpy's Feather Duster for the same purpose. And then the final spell that we have is going to be our 1 of Terraforming. This is just adding into the consistency, being able to search the field spell, and of course the field spell is able to search you any of your Tenpai monsters, so it's just another consistency piece. Finally, we have 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. This functions as both a hand trap and a board breaker, being able to use it going second to turn off an effect, but also being able to draw it as your 6th card and turn off something threatening on the board as a bit of interruption as well is incredibly strong. Now, that is going to be 41 cards. If you want to cut it down, just go ahead and cut the Dora, but I really like the utility that it adds into the deck, so let's go ahead and show you guys the extra. For the extra deck, of course, we have our 2 copies of Bident Dragon. This is just the main monster that you're going to be going into because it not only helps you extend further, but is also able to push for extra damage, summoning itself back from the graveyard. And then we also have our Transcendent Dragon. This is actually much easier to make in your main phase 1, thanks to something like Genroku. So now you can go ahead and make it in your main phase 1, entering your battle phase, and just preventing your opponent from doing anything before you even have to get to that. Because previously you would have to work your way into this during your battle phase, but that is no longer necessary. Then we have our honorary Tenpai dragon, of course, which is the Trident Dragon. This is how you are going to be able to push for an absolute ton of damage, both through prosperity and something like D-Shifter. This can swing for upwards of 18,000 damage on its own, if you are able to pop multiple cards, and one of them being the field spell, doubling its attack, so very, very incredible card. Then on to some level 7s, we have our Black Rose Dragon and our Odd Eyes Meteor Burst Dragon. Odd Eyes Meteor Burst functions in a similar way to the Transcendent Dragon, preventing your opponent from using effects in the battle phase, and Black Rose is incredible because since you're unaffected during your main phase, you can go ahead and just flat out wipe a board without your opponent being able to stop it, and then in the battle phase use something like the Kaiman as an E-Telly to summon out your, your Chundra, and then fully go for game on its own. Then, of course, we have our one copy of Samurai Destroyer. This is a new tech that we saw at the NAWCQ and the EUWCQ because it is able to prevent your opponent's U-Bell monsters from being able to float, meaning that you'll be able to go for game. Then we have our Ruddy Rose Dragon as just a generic 10 that is really good for anything that revolves around the graveyard. You can just go ahead and banish every card in the graveyard and call it a day. That is going to be it for the synchros. We do have a large number of Link monsters, and we will go over them. We have our one copy of Striker Dragon, and a lot of people don't really understand why Striker Dragon is played, but it is so that you can go into something like Little Knight using a Link monster and getting the effect to banish on summon. So just a very strong way of getting into the SP, which you otherwise wouldn't have. Then, of course, we have a couple of Link 2s with the Hieratic Seal of Heavenly Spheres and the Heat of the Fire Charmer. These are some of your end board pieces and combo pieces. The Hieratic Seal is what you are going to end on going first, which is an incredibly strong form of interruption for your opponent, and the Hita is actually part of the OTK package that we're going to have, because a very big threat for this deck is something like Dimension Barrier, which is now able to be searched with the Fiendsmith package and Angel of Blue Tears. So how are we going to go ahead and get through that? We are going to go ahead and go into our Promethean Princess, and in tandem, the Raging Phoenix and the Zealantis for the Zealantis OTK through something like a Dimension Barrier, and that's going to be the extra deck. And there you guys have it. That is going to be the updated Tenpai deck profile post Infinite Forbidden. We did only get the Genroku and the Doradora as support, but I think that this deck has an incredible spot in the meta. You guys know what you want to see, so if you want to see that combo tutorial, like I said at the beginning, make sure to get this video to 200 likes, and don't forget to check out the channel sponsor Dueling Guard. Using code INSANE18, you can get 5% off your entire order. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.